Hi, welcome back to Supercharged Fridays, 121 Fridays. We have been going live. How are you? Come in the comments and say hello. How are you doing? How's the week been? Let's catch up. It's been a while. So, I have such a juicy topic for you today, and it is all about those first 90 days in a new company, what to do, what not to do, based on some life experiences that my friend Tiffany and I have lived through. So, before we get into it, couple of quick things. Number one, I've been saying this for weeks and weeks now. We are so lucky we are living in this whatever region, country we are, and most of us, it's touch wood, knock on wood, things are peaceful, but not everyone is going through peaceful times. Please think of people who are going through struggles right now, refugees in many countries. If there's anything you can do to help, please, 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 let's do our part. Whatever it takes, helping out, donating clothes, donating time, money, volunteering, whatever, right? We are lucky. Not everyone is lucky. Let's not take that for granted. The second thing I wanted to say is next week at the same time, my live stream will be a little bit different. I'll be on the road. Supercharged Fridays will be on the road. I'll be by myself. I'll be traveling. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'll be at my business school in France where I did my MBA from. I'll be in meetings all day. I'll step out. And the topic next week is going to be about MBA. Should you not? Is it right for you or not? So I can't wait for that. It'll be on my mobile. It should be fun. Thirdly, Tiffany and I met through Diana YK Chan, who's an amazing career coach. If you're watching this right now in your life, please tag Diana in the comments. And Diana is doing a live stream today as well, and it's all about amplifying Asian voices. And I know it's going to be epic. Diana's amazing. So if you ever felt a little bit invisible where you live, where you work, just you don't necessarily feel seen or heard, Diana's guest panelists are going to talk straight to your heart. So, anyway, without further ado, let us talk about crushing those first 90 days with the one and only Tiffany Uman. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, Sonal. Thank you so much for having me and happy Friday.
Happy Friday. So excited you're here. Welcome to our friends from around the world, windy Finland, Mumbai, Texas. Adina, I think, is in Romania. Good morning
Wow.
in California. You guys are awesome. So happy to have you here. As you know, I look far and wide and get amazing people for the live stream or the broadcast because that's what we do. Tiffany, we have so much to talk about. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about what you do today.
Sure. Yes, happy to. So, I'm a career strategy coach, very much focused on empowering and uplifting ambitious professionals from all around the world to fast track your career success, really break down roadblocks, blind spots that might be standing in your way from those promotions, those salary raises, those new job opportunities, and also dive into all the things that school never really taught us in terms of setting us up for success. And I love today's topic around the first 90 days because that's certainly
Yes.
one of those areas where we're just kind of expected to know what to do getting into a new job, and the excitement might be there, but there's a lot of those little areas or pitfalls that can work against you if you're not careful. So I love shedding light on that from very much the inspiration of my own 13-year career in the Fortune 500 corporate space, having lived through all of it, to apply really tangible best practices to set you up for success regardless of what career you're in or what function that you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. We have folks joining from around the world. I see Goa in the house. I see Dubai in the house and South
South
Africa.
Africa.
You guys
Wow.
are amazing. And Ankur just started a week ago. Ankur, we are right here. And I also want to say this because I also did a YouTube video on it a couple of years ago. We pay so much attention to getting the damn job. And then you're in. And it's
That's
like,
it.
whoa,
So now what?
the rest. So we're gonna talk about the rest. So we clearly know why this matters. And Tiffany, anything else you want to share before we get started? Like, why somebody watching today, like, you
Yeah.
girls are a little too excited. Like, what's the big deal? Why is there such a strong business case for this?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I would say in large part it's because those first 90 days really set the tone for the future success in that organization. It can also be where often certain things are lacking to set you up for the most success, whether we're talking about training, onboarding, support, follow through, things like that. So, if you're not establishing yourself really well in those first 30, 60, 90 days, it can lead to problems down the line that you don't really want to fall into. So it's critical also in building up your personal brand, the way that you present yourself, the relationships that you're creating. And so although you might come into a role being really focused on just doing the work, there's also a lot of facets you want to consider, which we'll dive into today, that's going to help elevate you already in an early stage of your career within that company.
Okay, amazing. So we're gonna get cracking. And if you haven't found, like, if you haven't discovered Tiffany before today, I'm so glad you're here. Also, kind of say hi to each other in the comments, in the chat, wherever you are on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's a great way to meet people. I know there's a huge community of Supercharged Fridays. They've met on the, like, in the comment section. So
Oh,
take advantage of that. And I saw another comment from someone saying, "Hey, I just started a month ago." So I'm like, listen, dude, babe, you're in the right
you're in the right place.
you're in the right place. Surya, we got you set up, my friend. So
Yeah.
we've talked about why it's important. Now let's talk about what not to do. Tiffany, there are so
Yeah.
many things that we may not even realize that subconsciously we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Let's start with that list.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good place to start. I have a few different ones I'd love to walk through with our audience today. So I'd say the first, and what tends to be quite prominent, is actually letting yourself lack the confidence going into a new role. And
Sorry, could you repeat that?
yes, I was saying lacking the confidence in going into the new role or doubting the value that you bring because it's a new position. And this can apply whether it's a new job altogether or a new role within an existing organization. But the thing I want to share here is that anything new is going to feel uncomfortable. Like that's just the way it is. And so I don't want you to mistake something new as something that you're not capable of doing that would directly translate into a lack of confidence, because that confidence is going to exude in everything that you do, whether you realize it or it's subconscious. And so you need to be your own biggest cheerleader going into a new role, especially in those first 30, 60, and 90 days. So you don't want to go in doubting yourself, questioning yourself, or anything like that, because it will only keep you from really presenting your best foot forward. So that's definitely a big don't. Another one I would say kind of,
Um, Sorry,
yes,
I'm going to pause you for a second. In
go for
case
it.
somebody was sleeping, this is important. You were picked. They must have had a roster of 3 or 5 top candidates. You were picked. Sorry if I'm shouting. This is such an exciting topic.
It's
You were
okay.
picked.
I'm feeling it too.
You were picked for the job and not the other ones. There was a
Absolutely.
reason that you were picked. So do not feel like you're lacking confidence. Of course, it's a new company. Of course, it's new people. But just like Tiffany said, nobody comes into the company on day one and looks like they know what to do. In fact, if they do that, they might come across as overconfident, and the hiring team will be like, "Oh Lord, what did we
Yeah.
do?" Just
Uh,
watch that confidence piece, because that just is a silent killer of performance
Yeah, a
down the
hundred
line.
percent, a hundred
Okay.
percent. Sonal, so well said. And you're right. When you are entering into a role, you've been chosen for that position. So lean into that. Focus on what you do have versus what you don't have. It's the what you do have that caught their attention, that allowed you to be that chosen candidate. So that's what you really want to live in terms of that positive energy when you're entering into the role, instead of things that you might feel you need to learn or grow, which is obviously inevitable anyways in starting a new position. So this
Okay, I love
actually,
that. I love that. So just make sure you guys are paying attention. Lisa, Melissa, Surya, at least 5 of you watching who are in the comments, and the rest are silently watching. I see you. We see you. Just pay attention to that. Sorry, Tiffany, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
no, of course. I'm happy you did. I mean, we have such a great global group joining. I'm so happy to have you all here. So it actually leads nicely into the second don't that I would say, which is letting yourself, that being surrounded by more experienced people, keep you from actually sharing your voice or possibly comparing yourself to others. That's a real downfall. Of course, there's always going to be people that are more experienced, more senior. Maybe they've been at the company longer. But again, if you're seeing them and saying, well, my voice doesn't matter as much, or they probably know more than I do, or if what I'm saying is it really going to make sense? Is it going to resonate with them? Those are the types of negative mindsets, once again, that are only going to hold you back in letting your voice be heard in those critical first 30, 60, 90 days. And I've always done this with my own teams when I've had new members join. I love fresh blood. Like, I love that fresh perspective. That is something to be really valued. And just because someone's been there a long time doesn't necessarily mean that their way of doing things is the optimal way. And so you can be very much the one to bring new ideas, new thoughts, new recommendations as well. And if you're not allowing your voice to be heard in that way, it'll only stand in your way.
I'm so glad you said that. And particularly for folks who are watching who have changed industries, right?
Yeah.
Your little ego from a place of fear is going to say, stay back. Shh, don't say anything. Learn. Yes, of course you learn. Of course you observe all of that. But that doesn't mean that you don't share perspectives because they kind of paid you for it. Let's be honest here. They wanted
Yeah.
a fresh set of eyes and they paid top dollar. If you negotiated salary, if you've been watching my YouTube videos, and then you're there and then you're quiet, right? So I love that you shared this. Don't let being the newbie prevent you from speaking up because that's kind of almost expected, and you might be letting others and you might be letting yourself down if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Such a good add on. Okay, the third don't I would say, and this I've found has been quite common, Sonal, even in the audience that I have and speaking with them frequently, is sometimes lacking training or
Mhm.
onboarding in the way that you hoped it would have been coming into the role, maybe from what was shared in the interview process. And then suddenly you're there and it's maybe not existent or it's not exactly what you hope for. And so, my big advice here to avoid a don't is you don't want to let that just be the status quo. If you are lacking that training, if you are feeling like I'm just drowning here in terms of what I need to do, how I need to do it, don't let that stand in your way. I mean, a big thing here is being resourceful. So, what I mean by this is even if, let's say, you are lacking training, instead of just staying silent and feeling like you have to figure it out all on your own, which is a big don't, it'll lead to frustration, struggle, unnecessary mistakes that can work against the personal brand you're trying to create for yourself in your new role. Be resourceful. You can absolutely ask for help, but try to be as specific as you can in the asks that you're making. So instead of, for example, going to your boss and saying, I'm really lost on this, or I don't really know. I thought I knew what I needed to do in this area, but I'm really unclear. That's going to be a little bit too broad for them to really get behind. Whereas if you come to them saying, look, I'm working on XYZ part of my project, I've gotten about this far into it. That said, right now I'm facing a little bit of a blocking point and I'm not quite sure how to proceed. Would you be able to further support me on ABC? That
Okay.
is going to get a lot better response in return.
Okay. I love it. Would you be able to support me? I just remembered something. So when you why am I laughing? When you go to Tiffany's, can someone kind just tag Tiffany in the comments? When you go to Tiffany's LinkedIn profile, Tiffany, are you also in your LinkedIn profile? Do you also have links to your Instagram?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Please follow Tiffany on Instagram, TikTok. She is the queen of Instagram Reels and TikToks because I'm talking like you're not here. You give tutorials like 30 second, 10 seconds, say this, not that, right? And
Yeah.
this is a great example of that. And Tiffany uses humor, she dances.
Yes, a newly dancer on my reels.
No, really. So getting back to that, right? So don't let the lack of this is such a great point. I mean, all your points are great, but this one really hits home for
Yeah.
everyone who's watching right now. You have seduced the company and you said how great you are and they said wow and they brought you in. Let's not forget the company also seduced you and said, oh, we have all this great stuff, and then you join the company. There's no training budget, there's no this, there's no that.
Hmm.
It's like you open the curtains and you're looking on stage and there's nothing, and you on Broadway it looked amazing. What does this mean? It doesn't mean that it's a bad company. It's just the reality can sometimes vary a little bit from the perceptions that were shared on both sides.
Yeah.
So, what can you do? Are there free things you can watch? Can they pay for an inexpensive online course? Think, be creative. They will love you for it. They will remember, but don't use the excuse that you don't know what to do, because that will not be rewarded down the line. That will not be remembered down the line.
Yeah. You also want to just demonstrate a level of solution orientation, right? If you're constantly coming, especially to your new boss, and just being like, I'm not getting this, no one's supporting me in this area, I'm not sure what I'm doing, it's just going to be a lot of negative tonality that you're bringing into the conversation. Whereas, of course, your boss definitely holds a role in supporting you in that initial onboarding of the first 3 months, but you also have a role to play in taking proactivity in where you need those areas and being as specific as you can in sharing where those opportunities lie.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we
Yeah.
continue, Tiffany, I'm just going to take a quick look because I saw a question in the comments. Ahmed, the just it'll be there. The replay will be there on my LinkedIn or on my YouTube as well. LinkedIn user, please identify yourself. There's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, absolutely, and it comes with practice, right? If you're being
Yeah.
arrogant, somebody will tell you usually, or you'll just get isolated,
Yeah. Yeah.
and which is not what anybody wants, particularly in the beginning. You want troops next to you, right? Not against you.
Yeah.
Phoenix says, I really struggled during my internship, when I realized that my ideas were welcome. Yes, yeah, it's a great point.
Mhm.
Whether you're an intern or whether you're a C-suite member, at the end of the day, it's needed, right? So
Mhm.
and yep, lots of lovely words here. Hey Jeff, glad you're here. Engage, contribute, learn. Don't sit back. I think
I
it's the
love
sitting
that.
back people. The sitting back people. What happens is you don't. I'm not creating a label for you guys, but when you're sitting back, it becomes a habit, and then you become a backbencher, and then that your name is not the name that comes up for projects, promotions, etc.
Yeah, that's it. You nailed it, Sonal, because that's what's setting the precedent. You don't want that to be the narrative that you're creating for yourself. And if I may, I'd love to just come back to one of the points from the LinkedIn user's question of that fine line
Yeah.
between confidence and arrogance. I totally get that because there's one thing again that you don't want to do in a new job is being overly confident in a way where you're that person coming in thinking you know a lot and then being ready to change a lot of things, which could actually come off as really disrespectful to your new team members who might have been there a little bit longer, have done things and had reasons for doing things in a certain way. And again, it's not about changing or making it seem like your idea is the best idea per se, but it's more about taking the time to actually understand why certain things might have been done, asking the right questions so that you can eventually get to the recommendations you have, but in a way where you'll actually get the buy-in and not feel like pardon me, not feel like you're the new kid on the block that's just ready to discount everything that happened before you getting there and now ready to take things in a completely different direction. No one really likes that person.
Nobody likes that. No, nobody likes that. And you don't want to be that person, down the road as well. Yeah, yeah, please have your sip of water. Quickly, Ross, hey, buddy, the reason it's happening is because you're in your settings. I knew Jeff will come to the rescue. Thank you, Jeff. You're amazing. Thank you. And someone who's struggling with that, we've talked so much about this before, but I want to talk about it again. Shrida says, I have 3 years experience, I still lack confidence, and I want to sit back and I want to listen. So, Shrida, you've heard us today. You're saying, you're hearing us say, not great for your career. What are one or two things, Tiffany? I know we're going a little bit on off topic here, but I think this will really help, not just her, but others watching. What are one or two things she can do to build that up?
Yeah, to build up that confidence. I
Yes.
love it because it's a great segue into my next don't actually. So I'll use it as the lead in, which is not asking for feedback. What I mean is, and why this ties with the lack of confidence is
Mm.
even whether you're starting out or several years in, a lot of the time that lack of confidence could be that you feel like maybe you're not focusing on the right areas or you're not exactly sure where you stand in the eyes of your boss or management or your team. And so you're almost letting assumptions take over in your mind that maybe you're not performing in the way that you want, or you don't feel as confident to share things in certain meetings. But the problem with that is you're letting those assumptions become your reality. Whereas when you actually take the time to ask for feedback, and I hear you if this is what you're thinking on the other end of this live, which is, well, what if I'm kind of nervous about what that feedback might be? Like, what if it's not a great feedback? My advice to you on that is, well, they're thinking that whether you ask them about it or not. So wouldn't you rather be equipped with the feedback, both positive and constructive, so that you can actually action it and use it to your advantage to improve your development and level up in your confidence to feel that much more ownership and authority in your role? I'm a huge advocate of feedback, especially in those first 90 days. But again, even for Sreda, like 3 years into your role, constant feedback, fostering a feedback culture, giving feedback as well, right? This is a two-way street.
Yes.
You want to be able to set yourself up for success, but you also want to get the feedback along the way of, where you're focusing your energy. Are there new projects you could be taking on? Is there areas you can get more exposure in? If there's things that you're still struggling with in terms of really owning, getting feedback around that. This is just a really powerful tool that is often underutilized, especially in the first 90 days.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love it. The timing was perfect as well, Sridhar. And if you want to go deeper into this topic, I did a whole live stream back in February on feedback, how to give, how to receive. I think it was how to give. Yes, it was because those are two different topics. But this is really useful. If you don't have this feedback, you're going to be making assumptions. And we all know assume what it stands for, right? So we
Yeah,
don't want to be the ass making assumptions about you and me. We don't want that. So it's so useful to get that feedback. If you're on the right track, it'll build up your confidence. If you're not, you're going to course correct and it's going to build up your confidence. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong
definitely.
if it comes from a place of curiosity. So fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and any other that we missed out on, Tiffany, in terms of the don'ts?
Yeah. I have maybe two last ones and I'll make them fairly quick. The next one is not setting proper boundaries early on. So
Mhm.
if you're coming into a role, obviously being new, it's very easy to fall into that I need to prove myself mentality, and that I'm just going to, do what needs to get done, take it all on, not ask questions. But the problem with this, especially depending on what kind of company culture you're in, is that can lead to being very overworked if you're not having the right types of conversations with your boss and what work hours look like and non-work hours look like. You might end up seeing yourself answering emails very late at night, on the weekend. And as much as it might feel like a hurdle to set those boundaries early on because you don't want it to work against you, I would actually argue that it'll work against you even more by not setting that, because now you're creating, once again, a precedent that you're okay with doing certain behaviors or you're okay with this type of dynamic. And so if there's things that are important for you, I'll give a personal example. When I was coming into a new role and I was coming back from a maternity leave, I knew that my dynamic was going to be changing and that I would need to leave the office at the time at a certain time frame that was earlier than what I used to. I made that very clear early on in the role and let them know, and let my boss specifically know, how I would be reworking my days accordingly so that I'd still be on top of what needed to get done. But I was prioritizing what I needed to do in my personal life so that I can show up as my best self. So that's just one really quick example that actually articulating those boundaries will work better for you, and also see where your boss and team stands on that and where that flexibility is.
Okay. Okay. This is so important. We are so scared, Tiffany, that setting boundaries might make us look like a, selfish person, or how dare you, I mean, you're the new one. But at the same time, if you don't train people how to treat you, they will walk all over you,
Yeah.
which you'll be like, oh, I'm happy. I love my job. I love my colleagues. Sure. Down the road, you will burn out. You will be no use to anyone. So the boundary setting right at the beginning in very subtle ways. Again, follow Tiffany on Instagram because she has so much free stuff. Right?
Thank you.
And then obviously there's more that Tiffany teaches. But that will set you up that, oh, the email was sent after 7 p.m. Tiffany didn't reply. In fact, she replied at 8 a.m. She waited 11 hours. I'm going to send it again at 9 p.m. She didn't reply till 9 a.m. Okay, now another urgent thing comes up, let me just send it to her at 8 a.m. because I
Yeah.
think I kind of know her working hours. So we got to train people. If you're liking this, wherever you're watching, give us likes and hearts and subscribes. Come on, people. You're getting such fantastic value for free. And Tiffany, it's early morning in, where in Canada
Canada.
are you? Where in
I'm in
Canada?
I'm in Montreal, Canada.
You're in Montreal. Oh, okay, you're in Montreal, Canada. Lovely that you're here. Give her
Thank
lots of
you.
hearts and likes. I mean, come on. Come on, people. This is so amazing. And so, Tiffany, we talked about the don'ts, which I think already covers a lot. And I'm
Yeah.
going to get into the questions in a sec. I'm going to do a quick recap for all those who are joining late in terms of what not to do. Okay. We said don't lack, the first don't is don't lack confidence just because you're new. not it's new, sorry, just because you're new, right? The second is just because you're a newbie doesn't mean that you can't use your voice. And there's more to everything we're sharing. So please, if you're joining us late, please, in your own interest, watch the replay. And the third one was don't let the lack of training that you don't let it stand in your way of getting amazing work done. Don't skip asking for feedback. If you don't know, then you'll just keep shooting in the dark, right? And finally, don't ignore setting all those crucial boundaries that you need to be able to do a fantastic job. And wash your hands. Okay, you wash your hands. That's never a bad idea. So go ahead and wash your hands. Fantastic. And hey, Zaman, I hope this is helping you. This is exactly what we're talking about. Your question is exactly what we are talking about. Daksh is
Mhm.
saying a quick question here. At my current organization, there are one-on-one meetings every month with my manager, which was not something that was there in my previous. Yes, I mean your manager is a good person, right? Otherwise, they don't really know um, if they can help you or not. And Marcello says, what if? Just stop with the what if, man. Just ask. That's a great point. That's a great
Mm.
point. I'm going to say just a quick shout out to a very dear friend from Uruguay who's watching.
Aw.
Saludos desde Montevideo, Uruguay. Buenos días, Gonzalo. Espero que estés bien. Okay, I'm done with that. All right. Then Tiffany Shiraz has a question here. I joined one of the big four, right? So
Yeah.
I'm guessing Deloitte, Ernst& Young, KPMG, one of those. In the first month, I asked my counselor to give me feedback. And, time before my counselor initiated the discussion, I asked for feedback. What do you think? What else I should do? Follow up with that, Shiraz. I mean, if you're asking for feedback, then, you need to get it. Just asking is not enough, right?
Yeah,
So,
100%. And again, a little to my earlier point, feel free to be specific on what you need the feedback on. That way, it doesn't stay
mm,
at this very surface level
yeah.
approach of
Yeah,
feedback. Try to
you're a
really
great
dig to what you
worker.
want.
You're a great work. No, specifically, no, it wasn't good. What wasn't good? The magic lies in the specifics. So I really appreciate that. Hey, Ross, it worked. Fantastic, fantastic. I'm glad you're here. Now, Tiffany, let's talk about. We talked about the don'ts, which was a mighty juicy one.
Mhm.
Now, how do we like in terms of do's, because there's also related, right? The
Yeah,
corollary of don't is also related to do. Anything
yeah,
else you'd like to add in terms of
yeah.
definitely do this?
Sure. I'll break it down into three core components:
Okay.
boss dynamics, team dynamics, and company culture.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll take it one by one. So for the boss dynamics, there's a few things you want to take into account here. The first is what your communication approach is going to be with your boss. So one of the members that's joining us today just shared, they do monthly meetings with their boss. That's a great approach often, whether it's monthly, weekly statuses. But my point here on the communication flow is, what is the intention of each of those communication approaches? Are you going to have live meetings with them? If so, what is the purpose of those meetings? How do they like to use email with you? Are they big on email? Do they not like email? Are they more of an internal chat system type of dynamic with you? So you want to really ask these types of questions. I know it could sound very simple, but it's going to help you so much in better communicating with them and getting what you need from them in return in a style that works well for them and works well for you. Another key thing that you're going to want to do with your boss is get clarity very early on, ideally in the first week or two of your new job, of what your expectations and objectives are. Like, how are you actually being evaluated? And that's really important because these are the measurements for success in your role. So imagine you're starting in a new role and you just start going, but you don't really know what you're being evaluated against. That can actually work against you down the line when it comes time to performance reviews or whatnot. And you're like, I thought I was doing what I needed to do, but actually in hindsight, I didn't really have the clarity that I needed on what I'm being evaluated on. And that is a very logical question to ask your boss as you're starting out. What are the objectives that I'm being evaluated against, and getting better context around that? This could even, by the way, Sonal, be tied with like 30, 60, 90-day milestones. Maybe it's around understanding, what should be my big focuses for this first month, working towards in those next 2 months. And then by the 90-day mark, what would you like to see from me? Like, what would be some of the notable changes or evolution that would set me up for success in this role? And then like that, you've got a roadmap ready to go. And to the point earlier about confidence and whatnot, this is going to help fill in a lot of those gaps so that as you're asking for feedback along the way, you now have a roadmap to base that feedback on, not just keep it very arbitrary.
I think this is
Yeah.
key. I think this is key. And I saw a comment here from Shiraz. What used to take me 6 hours now takes me 4 days. Shiraz, we go back to that feedback point, right? And if the work isn't exciting you and you're very new, it's too. I personally think, Tiffany, I don't know if you have any views here, but I personally think it's too early to make a judgment call whether you're in the right place or not. Usually, our gut instincts don't betray us, but at
Yeah.
the same time, it might mean a bit more like digging and finding out what's really going on.
100%. And it could also be absolutely your prerogative to bring these feedback moments up with your boss and say, hey, if there's something that I've been doing that's actually become a little bit more second nature to me now, it's important that your boss also knows what motivates you in your work and helps align what you're doing in alignment with those motivations. So perhaps you've outgrown a certain thing, but to Sonal's point, it's not necessarily about, you know, just saying, I don't want to do that anymore. There just might be ways that you can tweak it or adjust it or level it up in a different way that will actually excite you a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And Tiffany, I have another great question here from Ross, right? So, are there any nuances to what we're talking about in terms of remote versus in person?
Yeah, 100%. So this actually leads a little bit to the second do, especially around
It's
team.
like they can read your mind.
I know, it's crazy. I love it. I love it. And this ties a lot with the team dynamics part, because for sure when you are in a remote setting, that is a different challenge of team dynamics and communication and establishing relationships when you're kind of alone, let's say in your home versus in an office setting where people are surrounding you. And so this is where it's really important, firstly, to understand your role, like inside and out, and what that entails, but also have a clear indication of how other people you work with tie into that role, right? So, for instance, where does your role end and someone else's start? Or what does your work have that interrelates with other people's work? And these are the types of conversations that are great to have in initial like integration meetings or onboarding meetings with other team members that you may very well need to initiate in a remote setting a little bit more than in a work setting within an office, as an example. But they're still really important to have so that even though you're not seeing people physically on a regular basis, you know how you tie into the bigger picture when it comes to the team. This can even extend to support teams, right? So you'll obviously have your direct team, most likely, but then there's support functions, other functions that you might be collaborating with. And you also want to be sure of, okay, how do I typically collaborate with them? How do they collaborate with me, I should say. Maybe what are some challenges or opportunities that I can support them on, and vice versa. And this is what I meant earlier about not coming off overly arrogant or that know-it-all. When you're actually meeting with these individuals and taking the time to understand what their historic context is, maybe how they work, why they work that way, where they would like support from you, etc. Now you're going to get a lot more trust and respect from them in when you share ideas and you collaborate with them versus assuming that you have all the answers. So these are definitely some important nuances, whether within a remote work or physical work. And sometimes you just have to dial it up a little bit more in a remote setting. Because if you're not making yourself seen, you could very easily go under the radar where no one really knows who you are. And you don't want that.
And it's hard enough as it is, even in person, right? So dialing it
Absolutely.
up, dialing it down, dialing it up more actually in a remote setting is so important. So Ross, this is such a great question. And I think, Ross, for there's some companies who've been doing the remote thing for a long time, much before COVID, right?
Yeah.
And there's some companies who've only adapted because COVID hit them in the where it hurts. So you also want to take lead, with and understand it from people who've been doing this for a while, right? People will ask me, for example, I haven't been in 100% remote team environment, so the advice I will give will be, it'll not be experiential, it'll be advisory, if you know what I mean. So if you want to know, kind of also get in more into the weeds, because this is a topic in itself that we can spend hours on. It'll be worth it to speak with people who've done this for a while. And even if they've done it for 2 years, but 2 years is already plenty, I think that would help as well.
Yeah.
So great, Tiffany. So we talked about the boss dynamics, we talked about team dynamics, and
Yeah.
how about company dynamics?
Yeah, perfect. I'll end off with that one. This is an important one too. When I talk about company dynamics or company culture, I really want you to get clear in those first 90 days. What are their core values? And you might have gotten already a feel of this, in, let's say, in the interview process or just researching them. But once you're in the company or in that organization, you're going to get a much better sense as to what they value, what they place importance on. This can even tie with what the core competencies are. There might be criteria that they're evaluating all employees against, even at all hierarchy levels. So you really want to get a good sense of what that is and then see how can you play into that? How can you highlight that? I'll give just a really quick example. Let's say one of the corporate values or competencies that they measure and put emphasis on is being entrepreneurial in your approach, right? So knowing that, you can then take that in even into these first 90 days and show a certain level of initiative, maybe able to bring new ideas forward that will optimize something you've been asked to do. Not necessarily, again, just expecting things to fall into place, but being resourceful in making it happen. So the more clear you are on what they put the emphasis on, you can actually make that parallel back to yourself a lot better. And a few other really quick things to keep in mind when it comes to company culture is meeting flow and structure. I mean, if there's one thing that's going to confuse the hell out of someone starting a new role, is being in maybe a meeting heavy culture and not really knowing, what are these meetings for? Do I have a role to play? Am I just sitting in? Do I have to prepare something? What's the goal of these meetings? So you really want to ask those questions once again early on to know where your role plays into that, but also what's expected of you so that you can be best prepared in those moments. And as a final quick point, I would say understanding what the internal verbiage or
Yeah.
acronyms are. A lot of
Yeah.
companies have those abbreviated terms, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
hearing this, you're like, what are they talking about? And to the point earlier about remote versus physical, like that could be even more prominent in a remote setting where you might already be a little bit distant, and then suddenly you're hearing these terms, you're like, I don't really know what they're talking about. So sometimes companies have like an internal guide of what acronyms stand for, but if not, ask about it. Do not be shy. If you're in a meeting and someone says something, you could very easily say, do you mind me asking, what does that stand for? I just want to make sure I'm following, or I want to make sure that I'm following along, etc.
Yeah, my goodness, this is a lot. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Tiffany shared heck of a lot here, and there's so much that you've covered. Ooh, Puerto Rico, how awesome! Sorry, I'm distracted for a second. The vocabulary part is so key, and you're in a meeting, and everyone like, what are they talking about? That's not an excuse. Ask, but even before you ask, just ask for the entire list. There will be somewhere, new hire orientation handbook. There'll be like, I don't know, 100 acronyms or abbreviations. Doesn't matter. Memorize them. The more you use them, the more you'll remember. But not knowing in the beginning is normal. But if you don't ask and you still don't know, it's not an excuse, right?
Yeah.
So I completely get that. Uh, I'm just gonna take a quick segue here. Hey Nadia, I had an interview. She's asked something off topic, but I want to see if we can help her. And she was asked if you should be more open to a senior role. Yes, and they haven't sent it right. So no worries, Nadia. Just follow up, saying I'm
Mhm.
really excited about that role. I'm excited about the company, and I'm looking forward to hearing the next steps. Right? I have a whole like email template guide on my website. If you want to use like certain words and phrases, you can get that, but don't not ask. Don't be shy, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Shiraz is saying, hey, the salary negotiation videos helped with her salary with the big four. That's amazing. Congrats to you. Well done. That is how it is done. Fantastic. Being remote is great, but it could never meet the experience and the image that, yeah, sure, but you're going to do the best. If remote may not even be a choice. And Ross says one of the biggest pitfalls is the way your new hire feels about skip communication. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, the boss's boss. I think it is critical to always keep your immediate manager in the loop, even if they say it's okay not to. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh,
Mm.
100%. And it's something
Yeah.
I actually wanted to add to the don'ts that I think I might have missed, that
Mhm.
when it comes to managing your boss and managing up effectively, you want to avoid surprises. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
more frustrating than blindsiding your boss. And sometimes it's unintentional, but they find out about things that really should have come from you as their immediate report. So that's a huge one, Ross. Absolutely. You want to keep them in the loop. It's also going to help build a lot of trust and rapport between the two of you where they can count on you. They know that you're on top of your stuff without having to have that skip level communication that might actually backfire.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think no boss likes surprises. No, nobody likes, particularly unpleasant
No.
surprises. So take advantage of that, and always ensure that you don't, hide blindside. Did you know about this, Tiffany? Yes. You're like, may I have a
Yeah.
word? And then it's like, oi, 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 oi.
Yeah. You don't want to
That's
be
not
that
what we
person
want.
either.
Yeah. We're like way over time. I thought we'll do this in 30 minutes, but this is so worth it. And the last thing I want to ask you, Tiffany, and then we let you go,
Sure.
is the what do we do if sometimes we're carrying a bit of baggage from the past?
Yeah.
Maybe it was a toxic job or a toxic boss or something like that, or the environment was toxic,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, clean slate, I'm starting fresh. You're not a robot, right? So what is the best way to start clean?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few quick pointers here. I mean, obviously mindset is a huge one, right? I often say I never want a negative past experience or even a toxic work experience to dictate your future. Like it should not have that power over you. I never want you to allow it to have that power over you and what you're capable of achieving. Now, often that's easier said than done. And so some things concretely and tangibly to help you with this is if you're looking for that new opportunity, you're ready to get something better that is going to actually serve you well in your career development. What I highly recommend is as you're leaving that previous job, take a moment to really reflect on the things that you don't want to experience again. It's almost like a post-mortem of what's gone down
Yeah.
and trying to be as objective about it as possible just to remove as much of that emotional connection that might have really hit hard for you, but to use it almost as a roadmap to guide your next steps. I mean, this can guide questions that you ask in interviews to make sure that it's the right fit for you. It could be conversations that you have in networking to get a really good gauge of what that organizational culture is before you even get into it. I mean, you have a lot of proactive say in that next step. And I want to make sure that you're positioning yourself best to not fall into some of those things that really worked against you in the past. Which, building on that, another key thing I highly recommend is also networking with both current and former employees of where you're looking to move to next. Sometimes interviews will give you a scope, but they might bias it to some degree. So speaking with actual employees and even former employees in that process is going to help you get a really good sense of, hey, is this an organization that I can really jive with? Does it line up with my values, or is it hitting on some of the things that I really didn't want to experience again and I'm going to just end up in that same boat? So these are all things that are a little bit more proactive, but are going to help you feel so much more confident going into that next role, even if you're coming from a negative past experience. And I guess the last thing that I'll say on this one is, even if, let's say, you have that past trauma or negativity coming up, give yourself a little bit of grace with that. This is going to be an adjustment, especially depending what happened in that past experience. It might not change for you overnight. You might be coming from a terrible boss and now having an amazing boss, and that's just new. And you're like, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm suddenly getting the autonomy that I wanted. I'm suddenly you getting positive reinforcement versus getting reprimanded or whatever it is. And know that it's going to take a little bit of that adjustment period, but it goes back to what I shared earlier about really focusing on what you do have and leveraging that positive energy to set this new precedent for yourself.
Okay, brilliant. I think that is so important to know what you don't want, and I heard you say that. And a great time, if any of you is not yet in a new company but you're interviewing, it's a great time to ensure that you are also testing. Because the last thing you want, it's very expensive for you to be in a new job or in a new company where you're literally going from frying pan to the fire, meaning it was bad and it's worse. So it's expensive for them. It's very expensive for you because then you need more time to find something else, and not to forget the mental and physical energy it takes to job search all over again. And everyone's talking about a candidate driven market. I think things are changing a little bit. We're hearing layoffs, so the pendulum swings both ways, right? There
Mm.
has to be a balance. And hearing all these recruiters getting huge bonuses, sign on bonuses, I'm not saying the bubble has burst, but it's just not sustainable. At some
Yeah.
point, sales have to catch up in all the companies. So you want to see their financial health, you want to see culture, all of that, and there's so much, so many ways you can find out in the interview process before the first 90 days. So never too late, right, to start that. But obviously, I also like what you said, Tiffany, that when you're interviewing, you remember you meet certain people and then you don't see them again. But they were cool people, right? It's a great place. It's a great idea to keep in touch with them. They may have
Yeah.
some, stakeholder impact in terms of where you go next, etc. And you'll always have that special bond. We always have a special bond with people we interviewed with throughout the lifetime in that organization. So giving yourself grace is very important. And I think, Tegan, you're very right, healing is important. And even if you're not 100% healed but you're getting there, that's good enough. No one's asking for like perfection. I think perfection is overrated. But if you're still like traumatized from stuff that has happened, give yourself grace and maybe give yourself a little bit of time
Absolutely.
to get over that. Fantastic. Oh my goodness, this was such a great session. We covered a lot. We covered a
We
lot.
did.
And all our lovely latecomers, no worries. I highly recommend you catch the replay. We talked about those first 90 days and how to crush the heck out of them and ensure that they're not just great for you, they're great for the organization. It has to work both ways. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be, I win, you lose. It's not a zero sum game, right? We talked about what not to do. We covered so many points in the don'ts, 7 points in the don'ts. We're not going to go through them, but do, check it out in the replay. We covered lots of points in terms of what to do as well. Where is it? Yes, boss dynamics, team dynamics. So many things were covered here, as well as how do you keep a little bit of that past in the past where it belongs to
Yeah.
ensure future success in the company. So please, 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 if you haven't done so already, follow Tiffany Uman on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok. She's absolutely amazing. Tiffany, this is such a pleasure. I think on
Oh,
behalf of everybody watching, and I'm seeing some questions here on YouTube which are a little bit unrelated. Thank you guys for being here. Could you do one thing? Instead of in the chat, could you copy paste your question and put it in the comments on my YouTube video that you're watching? And I'll make sure I reply because I want to make sure that you get the most for your time here. Thank you so much. And thank you to Tiffany as well for joining us today.
oh, thank you so much, Sonal. This has been so much fun. Thank you for everybody's questions. I hope you all found it helpful. And of course, I'm wishing you all the most success in your new jobs, in your continued jobs, and new opportunities. Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Of course, thank you. So, oi, give me a sec. Uh,
There you are.
sorry
You're
about
back.
that. Sorry about that. All right, so this was great. Tiffany's amazing, and I hope this was helpful. Of course, share this live stream with your friends. If you're, have a friend who's going through something similar to what we talked about, this would really, really help them. And catch me live next week at the same time. I'll be back in my business school. I'll be traveling. I'll be on the road. And Kevin talked about the tree. I'm not sure if I'll have my phone in a tree, but I'll remember this time to carry my tripod. And we're going to talk about MBAs, all things MBA. Do you want to do an MBA? I mean, I'll be in a business school, so that'll be a perfect place to talk about all things MBA. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Have a lovely Friday. It's Friday the 13th. You could have fooled me. And have a lovely weekend as well.